The situation in Kazakhstan's largest city, Almaty, is reported to be calm but tense after violence this week. The death toll from the unrest remains unclear. The Interior Ministry says more than 5,000 people were arrested. Troops from a Russian-led security alliance continue to enter the country after appeals for help from the president, and local people are facing an uncertain future.
A desperate wait for news. At an Almaty morgue, dozens of people line up. Many of them fear their loved ones died on January 6th, the worst day of a bloody week in Kazakhstan's largest city. Another queue in Almaty, this one for bread. Many stores had to close during the unrest in recent days. People are running out of food.
Other stores, the one over there and another further up the road, have been closed since yesterday. But people need to eat something.
The government appears back in control of downtown Almaty. But days of protests and looting have scarred the city as demonstrators let out their anger at decades of authoritarian rule, destroying this office of the ruling party. The unrest frightened many in the city. Some welcome the army on the streets.
They restore a feeling of security to people, give us the sense that we're on our way out of this, that things are gradually getting back to normal.
But normality doesn't look like this. Elsewhere in the city, the government continues what it calls an anti-terror operation. It's determined to put down opposition, whether it comes from violent or peaceful protesters.
They haven't been listening to the people. As a politician once said, if there's no chance of a peaceful revolution, there'll be an armed one.
As the situation worsens, people rush to flee Kazakhstan, some here in the north and many more in the south near Almaty. They're frightened by the situation in the city. One of them says it's as if the war has already arrived.
And I'm now joined by Karim Masimov, an independent journalist from Kazakhstan, and she joins me now from Prague. A very warm welcome to the show. We've now seen thousands of protesters arrested and thousands of mainly Russian troops sent into Kazakhstan under the Collective Security Treaty Organization. At this point, are President Tokayev and his government back in control?
From what I hear in Almaty, there are still occasional shootings on the streets and people are ordered to stay at home to be safe. And there is still curfew, which has moved from, I think, 11 p.m. to 8 p.m. And I would say that overall the situation is leaning more towards stabilizing, but it's still very dangerous to be outside.
Okay, so moving towards stabilizing, we have seen now arrests and dismissals at the top of Kazakhstan's security architecture, including the former security chief, Karim Masimov. Are we looking at an internal elite power struggle here?
To be honest, it's a mix of everything. It's mixed with people's genuine desire for change and political reforms. It is mixed with some internal political game in the highest echelons of power. And then there's geopolitics involved and other things. So right now it's really confusing and it's hard to say what exactly is going on and why some people did certain things. So I would say that it is connected mostly with some power struggles at the top, as well as people's desire for change.
Now, Russia presumably doesn't want to see ongoing pro-democracy demonstrations in the streets. Do you have the sense that the authorities will be able to maintain order in the long term, or are we likely to see protesters return to the streets in the coming days and weeks?
I think right now authorities are trying to just stabilize the situation with shootings and violence. But I'm sure that people will continue to protest if their demands are not met and not delivered as it was promised many years ago. And there are many people outside of Kazakhstan as well protesting in front of embassies and in front of different government buildings related to Kazakhstan. And so far, I don't know if authorities will change the line, and I don't think they will, because if we've heard the previous address to the nation of Tokayev, he was kind of threatening of the further crackdown on civil society and independent media. And we know that some activists, some peaceful activists, were detained and arrested and are now in jail.
Now, there was also speculation that the influential former president, Nursultan Nazarbayev, had fled the country. What do we know about his whereabouts and the role that he is playing in this?
There were rumors that he fled the country, but today we had official information from his press secretary that he's actually in the capital and he is in direct contact with Kassym-Jomart Tokayev, and that he asked to unite behind him to fight these forces. So we don't know what is true right now, because it's really confusing, and it adds confusion every day, some new official information. But some experts in a small Central Asian pool of experts think that Nazarbayev's power has become less than Tokayev's power now. And that's how the power struggle is at least viewed publicly. And yeah, I don't know if it's true or not, but clearly something is going on the top. And unfortunately, some civilians are dying, and we have known and heard some casualties on the streets where innocent people have died when they were just trying to get some food products amid this chaos and destroyed city of Almaty, for example.
Karim Masimov, thank you so much for joining us on the show with that important update. So let's bring in journalist Ben Aris. He is the founder of the media company BNE IntelliNews and has followed developments in Kazakhstan for more than a decade. A warm welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us this weekend. The speed at which these demonstrations flared up and spread across the country is remarkable. We've now seen thousands of protesters arrested, thousands of mainly Russian troops sent into Kazakhstan. Are President Tokayev and his government now back in control?
Indeed, it's been extraordinary. This came out of left field. No one was expecting it. Kazakhstan has been long one of the most successful and stable of all the Central Asian countries. And yet the price hikes of fuel for cars at the weekend following a market reform caused riots, caused demonstrations in the west of the country. And by Tuesday, that had spread across the whole country, and no one was expecting that. And then we saw unprecedented, huge demonstrations in Almaty, the commercial capital, tens of thousands of people on the streets, sort of reminiscent of Ukraine and Belarus. And it ran rapidly out of control. The president immediately sacked the government, tried to blame the ministers. He reintroduced subsidies for the fuel prices and actually took the price back to less than what they were last week. And it didn't work. And on Wednesday, it looked like the government had lost control of the situation. But on that night, they called in the Russians. And now I just talked to our correspondent again today in Almaty. He was out and about, and he said most people have stayed at home. There's sporadic clashes, but nothing on a large scale. And the city is calm, and the government seems to be back firmly in control.
And we've also seen arrests and dismissals at the top of Kazakhstan's security architecture, including the former security chief, Karim Masimov. How would you interpret that?
Yeah, there's a second story going on here, because the politics in Kazakhstan are slightly complicated in so much as Nazarbayev, the former president, who's been in charge since 1991, since the beginning, he stepped down in 2019 and handed over to the new president, Tokayev. However, he didn't really step down. He remains in the background. He's the head of the National Security Council. He also, his loyalists were in charge, Masimov, in charge of the security services. And in Eastern Europe in general, Central Asia in particular, whoever runs the security service is the seat of power. That's the tool you use to stay in power. And during the protests, Tokayev has used them opportunistically, it seems, to take full control of the country. And so Masimov was sacked, and Nazarbayev was removed from the Security Council, and Tokayev took over there. And so now he's in charge. So you could actually read this actually as a coup of sorts, although the president stays in place, but he's taken full control. He's pushed Nazarbayev out completely. And this arrest is very significant because Tokayev has now put one of his own loyalists in charge of the security services. And that's the real power. Now he's really in control of the country.
All right, Ben Aris, thank you so much for joining us on DW News with that update.
Pleasure.
And let's turn our attention now to some of the other stories making news around the world. Albanian police have used tear gas